Hey, my name is Tyler. I'm 26, or at least I was when all this started. I grew up in Portland, Oregon. I wasn't some big dreamer with a 5-year plan. I worked construction framing houses, pouring concrete, swinging a hammer until my shoulders burned. It paid the bills, kept me moving, and let me crash in a tiny apartment with a view of the freeway. Life was simple. Wake up at 5, grab a black coffee from the corner cart clock in by 6, and try not to think too much about tomorrow. That all changed 6 months ago. The company I worked for, Pacific Builders, hit a rough patch. A big condo project fell through when the investors pulled out, citing market fluctuations, or whatever buzzword they used to cover their asses. Layoffs came fast. One Friday, my boss handed me a pink slip and a handshake that felt more like a pat on the back for a dog they'd decided to put down. Nothing personal, Tyler. Tough times. I walked out with a severance check that barely covered 2 months' rent and a duffel bag of tools. My girlfriend at the time, Sarah, stuck around for about a week after that. She said she needed someone stable, someone with a future. I didn't blame her. I was staring at my bank app, watching the numbers drop like rain on a windshield, and stability felt like a joke. For weeks, I crashed on friends' couches, picked up odd jobs, hauling scrap metal, fixing a neighbor's leaky roof for $50 and a six-pack. I scrolled Craigslist at night, not for apartments I couldn't afford, but for something else. An escape. That's when I saw the ad, Abandoned Farmstead, 5 acres fixer upper house, $15,000 OBO. Cash only, no utilities, secluded in rural Oregon. There was one blurry photo, a sagging wooden house with a rusted tin roof, overgrown fields, and a barn that looked like it hadn't seen paint since the 70s. The listing said it had been vacant for 3 years after the old owner passed. No heirs, no interest. 15 grand. That was almost everything I had left after paying off my truck loan. I laughed when I first read it, me, a city kid who'd never grown a tomato in his life, buying a farm. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Portland felt suffocating, full of reminders: the job site where I'd been let go, the bar where Sarah had broken up with me. I needed quiet, space, a place where no one knew my name or expected anything from me. I called the realtor, a gruff guy named Hank, who sounded like he'd smoked a pack a day since Nixon. "It's a steal," he rasped, "but it's rough. No power, no well pump working right. Cash deal as is." I wired the money the next day, signed the papers in a dingy office that smelled like stale coffee and old paper. Just like that, I owned 5 acres of nowhere. It took me 6 weeks to get my act together. I sold what little furniture I had, packed my Ford Ranger with basics: a toolbox, sleeping bag, camp stove, a cooler of canned food, and a couple changes of clothes. I told my mom I was taking a break and promised to call when I got signal. She worried, of course, moms do, but she didn't push. "Just be safe, Tyler, and come home if it gets too hard." The drive out was 4 hours southeast, past the suburbs and into the hills where the trees got thicker and the roads narrower. It was late February, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones even with the heater blasting. Gray skies, patches of snow on the ground, the air sharp with pine. The GPS lost signal about 20 miles out, but Hank had given me directions. "Follow the gravel road off Highway 26 until you hit the old mill ruins, then veer left for 2 miles. My truck rattled over potholes, kicking up dust that froze in the air. The farm came into view slowly, a faded wooden fence, half-collapsed fields, choked with blackberry brambles and tall grass gone wild. The house sat at the end of a long driveway, 2 stories of weathered cedar siding, a wraparound porch sagging on one side. The barn loomed behind it, doors hanging open like a tired smile. No neighbors in sight, just miles of empty land and the distant hum of wind through the evergreens. I pulled up, killed the engine, and sat there for a minute. This was it, my fresh start. I grabbed my duffel and toolbox from the bed, the cold biting through my jacket as I crunched over frozen gravel. The key Hank gave me was rusty, but it turned in the lock with a groan. The door stuck, at first warped from years of rain, then swung open with a creak that echoed inside. The place smelled like damp wood and neglect. Dust motes floated in the weak light filtering through grimy windows. The living room had a stone fireplace blackened from old fires, a threadbare rug, and a kitchen off to the side with a cast iron sink and a wood-burning stove that looked straight out of the 1950s. Upstairs, 2 small bedrooms and a bathroom with plumbing that probably hadn't worked in years. No electricity, no running water, just a hand pump in the yard that Hank swore might still draw if you prime it. I set my stuff down feeling a mix of excitement and dread. This was mine. All mine. I could fix it up, slow patch the roof, clear the fields, maybe get some chickens or a garden going. Live off the grid figure out who I was without the noise. But as I stepped back outside to unload more gear, something caught my eye. Smoke. Thin white curls rising from the chimney on the east side of the house. Not thick like a fresh fire, but steady. Someone had lit it recently. My stomach dropped. Squatters' kids partying worse. I hadn't seen any cars, but the driveway curved around back. Heart pounding, I grabbed a crowbar from the toolbox just in case and circled the house quietly. Footprints in the frost led to the back door, small and fresh. The smoke kept rising, carrying a faint scent of burning pine and something cooking. Soup, maybe. I crept up the porch steps, avoiding the loose boards that creaked under my boots. The back door was ajar, a sliver of warm light spilling out. Voices inside, soft, feminine murmuring. I pushed the door open slowly, crowbar raised. The kitchen came into view, first a pot simmering on the wood stove, steam fogging the window. Then the living room. 2 women, really maybe my age, stood by the fireplace, frozen like deer in headlights. Blonde hair tangled and shoulder-length faces smudged with soot. They wore layered clothes, flannel shirts over thermals, jeans patched at the knees, boots that had seen better days. One held a poker from the fire set, gripped like a bat. The other had her hands up, palms out. "Please?" The one with the poker whispered, voice trembling but steady. "Don't call the cops. We'll leave right now." I lowered the crowbar, my mind racing. They weren't thieves, they looked exhausted, not high or dangerous. The room was tidy, blankets folded on the couch, a makeshift clothesline by the fire with socks drying, windows patched with plastic and duct tape, a couple of backpacks in the corner, stuffed but organized. "Who are you?" I managed my voice rougher than I intended. The poker lowered a fraction. "I'm Autumn," she said. The other nodded. "And that's my sister Willow. We're just staying temporary. We didn't know anyone bought it." Willow stepped forward, eyes wide, but not scared, assessing. "We'll pack up. 5 minutes." I glanced at the fire, the pot bubbling with what smelled like vegetable soup. Outside, the wind howled, temperatures dropping fast. Calling the cops felt wrong. Kicking them out in this cold felt worse. "Wait," I said, setting the crowbar down. "Just wait." The silence stretched out like the cold outside, thick and heavy. Autumn and Willow stood there, waiting for me to say something, anything that would decide their next move. The fire crackled in the hearth, throwing flickering shadows across the worn wooden floors. I could see the tension in their shoulders, the way Willow's fingers twitched like she was ready to bolt, and Autumn gripped that poker a little tighter, even though she'd lowered it. I rubbed the back of my neck, buying time. My mind was still catching up. These weren't burglars rifling through drawers or spray painting walls. The place looked lived in, cared for even. A stack of canned goods on the counter, beans, tuna, a few jars of peanut butter. A notebook open beside them, pages filled with neat handwriting. Lists, maybe. And the soup on the stove smelled homemade, not like something heated from a can. "Look," I finally said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm not calling anyone, but I need to know what's going on here. This is my house now." Autumn nodded slowly, setting the poker down against the wall with a soft clank. "We didn't know it sold. We thought it was still abandoned. The realtor never came by and the lock was busted when we got here." Willow glanced at her sister, then at me. "We'll grab our stuff. It won't take long." She moved toward the corner where their backpacks sat, but I held up a hand. "Hold on. It's -5. Out there, maybe colder with the wind. You're not going anywhere tonight." They both froze again, exchanging a look I couldn't read. Autumn spoke first. "We don't want trouble. We've been here 3 weeks. We can be out by morning." 3 weeks. That explained the patched windows, the organized cans. I leaned against the doorframe, the crowbar still on the floor where I'd left it. "Start from the beginning. How do you end up here?" Autumn took a breath, wrapping her arms around herself like she was holding something in. "Our mom, she passed 4 months ago, lung cancer. She fought it for 2 years, but the bills, Her voice cracked and she looked down at the floor. Hospital took everything. The house, her savings, even the car title for collateral. We had nothing left. Willow picked up where her sister left off, her tone quieter but matter-of-fact. We were living in her old Subaru after the foreclosure, parked in Walmart lots campgrounds when we could afford it. The engine gave out outside Salem, blown head gasket. Repair shop quoted $2,000 we didn't have. We started walking hitchhiking when we could. Heard about this place from a guy at a shelter. Said it had been empty forever. I listened, the pieces clicking into place, the footprints in the frost, the soup. The way they'd made this shell of a house feel almost functional. And you've been squatting here since… Autumn nodded. We didn't break anything. Fixed what we could. The back door lock was already gone. We just propped it shut with a chair at night. We sweep, we cook, we keep the fire going so the pipes don't freeze. We were going to leave once we saved enough for a deposit on a room somewhere. Saved from what? I asked. You got jobs? Willow shook her head. Not yet. We've been applying, grocery stores, diners, anywhere hiring. But without an address… She trailed off. I knew how that went. No address, no reference, no chance. The pot on the stove bubbled louder, steam curling up toward the ceiling. Autumn moved to stir it automatically, like she'd done it 100 times. We stretch what we have. Canned stuff from food banks. Foraged mushrooms when the weather was better. We weren't planning to stay forever. I watched her ladle the soup, carrots, potatoes, onions, floating in a thin broth. It smelled better than anything I'd eaten in weeks. My stomach growled traitorously. She heard it and glanced up, a tiny smile tugging at her lips despite everything. You're hungry, she said. Not a question. I hadn't eaten since a stale granola bar on the drive. Starving. Willow hesitated, then pulled 3 mismatched bowls from a shelf, probably left by the previous owner. There's enough. We always make extra. Habit from before. I should have said no, should have kept boundaries. But the cold was seeping through the walls and the idea of sending them out into it felt wrong. All right, but we're talking more after. They nodded, relief flickering across their faces. Autumn served the soup while Willow found some crackers in a tin. We sat at the rickety kitchen table, me on one side, them on the other. The bowls were chipped, the spoons bent, but the soup was hot and surprisingly good. Simple, but it warmed me from the inside out. So, I said, between spoonfuls, Autumn and Willow. Twins. Identical, Willow confirmed. Born 6 minutes apart. She's the bossy one. Autumn rolled her eyes. And she's the planner. Always has been. I learned more in those 20 minutes than I had in months of small talk with coworkers. They were 24, 2 years younger than me. Grew up in Eugene, mom, a nurse dad gone before they could remember. Autumn studied agriculture for 2 years at community college before dropping out to care for their mom. Willow had a knack for numbers, managed the bills, stretched every dime. They'd been on their own since the funeral, bouncing between shelters and the car until it died. We didn't steal anything, Autumn said again, like she needed me to believe it. We even left the canned goods we found in the pantry. Figured they belonged to whoever came back. I believed her. The house felt different because of them, less like a tomb, more like a place where people had tried to survive. After we finished, I stood up. Okay, here's the deal. It's too late, too cold. You stay tonight. I'll take the couch. Tomorrow we figure out next steps. Willow started to protest, but Autumn cut her off. Thank you, really. I waved it off, grabbing my duffel from the porch. The couch was lumpy springs poking through the cushions, but I'd slept on worse. I could hear them moving around upstairs, whispers, the creak of floorboards, the soft thud of the bedroom door closing. The fire settled into embers, casting a faint glow through the room. Lying there in the dark, I stared at the ceiling beams, my house, my fresh start. Except now it wasn't just mine. 2 stranger sisters were sleeping in what was supposed to be my bedroom. I should have been angry. Should have been calling Hank to see about trespassing laws. But all I felt was something else. Not pity. Not exactly responsibility. Just a quiet realization that I wasn't the only one starting over. The wind howled outside, rattling the plastic on the windows. I pulled my sleeping bag tighter, listening to the house settle. For the first time in months, the silence didn't feel empty. Morning came slow, the kind of gray dawn that creeps in without fanfare. I woke to the smell of coffee, real coffee, not the instant packets I'd packed. The fire had been stoked sometime in the night. Fresh logs glowed red behind the grate. Autumn was already up, crouched by the hearth in an oversized flannel hair twisted into a messy knot. Willow sat cross-legged on the floor with a spiral notebook pen, moving in tight, deliberate strokes. "Morning," I muttered, voice gravel rough. My back protested from the couch springs. Autumn glanced over. "Figured you'd want caffeine before the Inquisition." She nodded toward the stove where a dented percolator hissed. "Found some grounds in a tin." "Still good." Willow didn't look up. "We're making a list. Everything the house needs versus what we can do with what's here." I rubbed my eyes and sat up. The room looked different in daylight, less haunted, more like a project. Sunlight filtered through the plastic-covered windows, catching dust motents in slow motion. Their backpacks were neatly lined against the wall, sleeping bags rolled tight. No sign they'd rifled through my duffel. I took the offered mug, ceramic chipped but warm, in my hands. "So what's the damage?" Willow flipped a page. "Roof 3 patches minimum, southwest corner worst. Chimney needs repointing, pump handles seized, probably the leather washer. Windows 6, cracked panes, 2 completely gone. Floorboards upstairs, 2, loose, 1 rotten through." She tapped the paper. "We can prioritize." Autumn stood brushing soot from her knees. "I can start on the roof if you've got shingles. Or at least tarp the bad spot before the next rain." I raised an eyebrow. "You know, roofing stage crew in high school?" She said like it explained everything. Built sets hung, lights patched black box ceilings. Same principle measure, twice don't fall off. Willow added, "I handled props and budgets. I can track costs, stretch every dollar." I drank the coffee strong, a little burnt perfect. "All right, let's see what we've got." We spent the morning in the barn. It was a cavern of cobwebs and rusted tools, but the rafters were solid. I hauled out ladders, a half box of nails, a coil of rope. Autumn found a stack of cedar shingles under a tarp, warped but usable. Willow cataloged everything in her notebook. 32 shingles. 1 LB nails, 1 roll. Roofing felt partial. By noon, we were on the roof. The cold bit through my jacket, but the work warmed me. Autumn moved like she'd done this before, kneeling, prying loose the rotten section, sliding new shingles into place. I held the ladder past tools, learned her rhythm. Willow stayed below, cutting tarp to size with a utility knife she'd sharpened on a whetstone. "Left 2 inches," Autumn called down. "Overlap or it'll leak." Willow measured, marked, sliced. Precise. We broke for lunch on the porch steps, peanut butter sandwiches on stale bread water from the cooler. The sky had cleared to a pale winter blue. Steam rose from our breaths. "So what's the plan?" After this, I asked, wiping crumbs from my jeans. Autumn shrugged. "Get the house livable, find jobs, save for first last on an apartment." She didn't look at me when she said it like the words were heavier than the shingles. Willow closed her notebook. "We've got 3 leads in town: hardware store, diner, motel, housekeeping. Interviews next week if we can borrow your truck." I nodded. Keys are on the hook. The afternoon blurred into motion. We patched the worst roof leak, replaced 2 window panes with plexiglass scavenged from the barn, and wrestled the pump handle until it groaned and spat rusty water. Autumn primed it with a bucket from the rain barrel. After 10 minutes of pumping, the stream ran clear. "See," she said, wiping sweat from her brow despite the cold. "Still works." Willow smiled, small but real. Running water. Luxury. By dusk, we were filthy, hands blistered, but the house felt different. Solid. The fire roared again, casting gold light across the walls. We ate soup thicker this time with potatoes from a sack they'd bartered for in town. I noticed Autumn had added herbs from a windowsill pot she'd started weeks ago. After dinner, Willow spread graph paper on the table. "Garden layout," she announced. "South-facing slope behind the barn, full sun. We can do raised beds, companion planting. Tomatoes need stakes, beans climb, basil repels bugs." Autumn leaned over her shoulder, pointing. "Rotate crops. Corn here first year, then legumes to fix nitrogen." I watched them sketch, argue over row spacing, laugh when Willow drew a tiny chicken coop in the corner. "For eggs," she said. Eventually, I found myself smiling. You two always this? Organized Autumn grinned. Survival skill. Mom was a nurse shift schedules meal plans. We just adapted. Willow tapped the paper. If we clear the brambles by April, plant in May, we'll have food by July. Sell extras at the farmer's market. I leaned back, the chair creaking. You're staying through summer. They both went quiet. Autumn traced a finger over the garden sketch. If you'll have us? I didn't answer right away. The fire popped, sending sparks up the chimney. Outside, the wind had died. Stars glittered through the patched windows. I thought about the empty months ahead, me alone swinging a hammer at walls that didn't care. Then I looked at them, soot-smudged, determined, turning my wreck of a house into something with a pulse. Yeah, I said finally, I'll have you. Autumn's shoulders relaxed. Willow's pen stopped moving. Neither said thank you, they didn't need to. The silence was enough. That night I took the couch again. Upstairs I heard them moving, soft footsteps. The creak of the bedroom door whispered plans about seed catalogs and compost. The house settled around us, no longer echoing with abandonment but with possibility. I fell asleep to the sound of pages turning and the low murmur of two voices mapping out a future none of us had planned. The first real money came 2 weeks later on a Tuesday that started with frost on the grass and ended with 3 crisp $100 bills folded into Autumn's pocket. I'd gotten a call from the Millers, retired couple 3 miles down the road, needed their old hay barn repainted before spring planting. Cash job, Mrs. Miller said over the phone. $500 if it's done right. I almost turned it down, too much roof left on the house, too many leaks, but Autumn overheard and grabbed the keys before I could. I'm coming, she said, already pulling on her work boots. You need a second set of hands, and I need to prove I'm not just dead weight. Willow stayed behind to finish patching the upstairs floorboard and to keep an eye on the seedlings sprouting in egg cartons on the windowsill. She waved us off with a thermos of coffee and a warning, don't let Tyler fall off the ladder. He's clumsy when he's thinking. The Miller's barn was bigger than ours, red paint peeling in sheets, doors hanging crooked. Mr. Miller met us with a handshake and a bucket of exterior barn red. Take your time, he said, but not too much. Autumn climbed the extension ladder like she'd been born on it. I steadied the base past brushes, stirred paint. She worked in long, even strokes, no drips, no missed spots. By noon, we'd done the south wall. Mrs. Miller brought sandwiches and watched Autumn scrape old paint with a wire brush. You hire out, she asked. Autumn wiped sweat from her forehead. Just getting started. We'll start with us again next month. The chicken coop could use a coat. We finished by 4. Mr. Miller inspected, nodded approval, and peeled off 500s from a roll in his overalls. 3 for the work, 2 extra for the girl who didn't waste a drop. Autumn tried to protest the bonus, but he waved her off. Earned it. On the drive home, she held the cash like it might vanish. First money I've made in 8 months, she whispered. Real money. I glanced over. You're hired. She laughed, short, surprised, real. Back at the farm, Willow met us on the porch with a ledger page already open. Income, $500. Expenses, $42 gas, $18 paint thinner. Net, $440. She looked up. We're in the black. That night, we ordered pizza, first takeout since I'd arrived. The delivery guy got lost twice on the gravel road, but when he finally pulled up, the smell of pepperoni and melted cheese filled the house like a celebration. We ate on the floor because the table was covered in seed packets and graph paper. Willow sliced the pizza with a pocket knife. Next goal, running water in the kitchen sink. Tyler says the pipes are intact, just need a new pressure tank. Autumn licked sauce from her thumb. And electricity. Even a small solar kit. I saw one at the hardware store for $1,200. I raised my slice. To not sleeping in a car. They clinked paper cups of flat soda against mine. The jobs snowballed. Word spread in the tight-knit way rural towns do. Mrs. Miller told her bridge club. Mr. Miller told the feed store owner. By the end of the month, Autumn had 3 more gigs lined up, painting a tool shed, reinforcing a porch, patching a greenhouse roof. Each paid cash, each came with a referral. Willow turned the living room into command central. A corkboard on the wall tracked jobs, deadlines, materials. She negotiated bulk discounts at the lumber yard, bartered leftover paint for nails, kept every receipt. "We're a business," she declared one evening, pinning a new work order to the board. Unnamed, unlicensed, but profitable. I handled the heavy lifting and the truck, but they ran the show. Autumn's hands were calloused, now stained with primer and pine pitch. Willow's notebook had evolved into a 3-ring binder, color-coded by category. One Friday after Autumn finished a deck-staining job that paid $650, we drove into town for supplies. The hardware store clerk, rusty beard down to his chest, recognized her. "Heard you're the new Fix-It crew. Need a sign?" Autumn laughed. "Working on it." We loaded the truck pressure tank PVC pipe, a used 200-watt solar panel someone was selling cheap. On impulse, I grabbed 3 camp chairs, real ones with cup holders. "For the porch," I said. "We've earned it." That night, we installed the pressure tank by headlamp. Water sputtered, then gushed clear and cold from the kitchen tap. Willow whooped loud enough to startle an owl outside. Autumn filled a glass drink and handed it to me. 2 indoor plumbing. The solar panel went up the next day. Willow wired it to a car battery and a single LED bulb. When she flipped the switch, the kitchen glowed soft and steady. No more lanterns, no more stumbling in the dark. We celebrated with canned ravioli heated on the stove, and the camp chairs arranged in a triangle on the porch. Stars wheeled overhead, brighter than I'd ever seen in the city. Crickets chirped. Somewhere down the valley, a coyote yipped. Autumn leaned back, boots on the railing. 3 months ago, I was sleeping in a Walmart parking lot with the windows cracked for air. Willow hugged her knees. Now we've got running water, a roof that doesn't leak, and a bank account with 4 digits. I looked at the house behind us, lights on, smoke curling from the chimney, the faint smell of pine and earth, and a garden that's actually growing. Autumn turned to me, her face half lit by the bulb inside. "You could have kicked us out that first night." I shrugged. "Would have been colder without the fire." She smiled, small and genuine. "Thank you, Tyler." Willow raised her water bottle. "To not being homeless." We clinked again. Later inside, I watched them from the couch as they updated the corkboard. Autumn pinned a new job, $800 to rebuild a fence. Willow calculated profit margins in the margin of her ledger. The house hummed with purpose. My house. Our house. I didn't say it out loud, but the thought settled warm in my chest. Whatever this was, it was working. Spring arrived the way it always does in Oregon, slow, then all at once. One week the ground was iron hard and the sky the color of steel. The next, the hills exploded in green wildflowers, pushing through the cracks in the driveway like they'd been waiting for permission. The garden we'd scratched into the dirt behind the barn had turned into something real. Rows of lettuce unfurled glossy leaves, tomato plants climbed their stakes, and the herb bed spilled rosemary and thyme across the path. Autumn had rigged a drip line from the rain barrel. Willow tracked every ounce of water like it was gold. We'd fallen into a rhythm. Morning started with coffee on the porch, real coffee now ground fresh from a 5-pound bag we'd splurged on after a big fencing job. Autumn left early for whatever site needed her hands that day. Willow stayed behind to manage the books, answer emails on the ancient laptop we'd bartered for, and tend the seedlings. I hauled materials, fixed what broke, and kept the truck running. Evenings were for dinner on the porch steps, the camp chairs arranged in their usual triangle, the LED bulb glowing steady through the kitchen window. The corkboard inside had grown crowded. Jobs stacked on jobs, a deck rebuild, a greenhouse extension, a full barn repaint for the county co-op. We'd bought a second-hand trailer to haul lumber, painted our names on the side in Autumn's careful block letters, A&W Fixes. No logo yet, but Willow was sketching one, a simple shovel crossed with a paintbrush. The bank account had crossed 5 figures. We'd paid cash for a used well pump, a propane tank, and a real mattress for the upstairs bedroom. I still took the couch out of habit, but the springs didn't complain as much anymore. One late May afternoon, I came in from splitting firewood to find Autumn standing alone in the garden, watering can dangling from her hand. She wasn't moving, just staring at the tomato plants like they held answers. The sun was low, painting everything gold, and the air smelled of warm earth and cut grass. I set the axe against the porch rail. "Everything okay?" She didn't turn right away. "Yeah, just thinking." I walked over, boots crunching on the gravel path. Up close, I could see the faint freckles across her nose, the way her hair had lightened from all the hours outside. She'd tied it back with a strip of old flannel. thinking about what I asked. Autumn set the can down, wiped her hands on her jeans. About leaving. The word hit harder than I expected. I'd known it was coming, had known since that first night when they'd offered to pack up in 5 minutes. But somewhere between the roof patches and the pizza nights, the idea of them gone had stopped feeling inevitable. Willow appeared in the doorway, dish towel over her shoulder. She'd heard. She always heard everything. Autumn kept going, voice steady. We've got enough saved for a deposit on a place in town. 1 bedroom, maybe. We could split rent, keep the job stop. Imposing. Willow leaned against the frame. You're not imposing, she said quietly. But we don't want to overstay. I looked at the garden, the house, the life we'd patched together out of nothing. The porch light flickered on automatically. Willow had wired a timer last week. Smoke curled from the chimney. Dinner simmered inside. It wasn't perfect. The barn still leaned. The upstairs bathroom leaked when it rained hard and the truck needed new tires. But it was ours. I picked up the watering can, handed it back to Autumn. You're not imposing, I said. And you're not leaving. She met my eyes, searching. Tyler. This isn't charity, I cut in. It's not temporary. The house, the garden, the jobs, none of it works without all three of us. You want to go, I won't stop you, but if you're asking what I want. I gestured at the rows of green, the trailer parked by the barn, the light spilling from the kitchen. I want this. Us. Here. Willow's dish towel slipped to the floor. Autumn's shoulders rose and fell with a breath I hadn't realized she was holding. You mean it? She asked. I nodded. The house is big enough. We'll fix the 2 bedroom, add a real bathroom. Split the bills, the work, the wins. Call it a partnership. Call it whatever. Just don't call it temporary. Autumn looked at Willow. Willow looked at me. Then Autumn smiled, small at first, then wide enough to crinkle the corners of her eyes. Okay, she said. Partners. Willow picked up the towel, folded it neatly. I'll update the ledger. 3-way split. We stood there a moment, the three of us in the fading light, the garden humming with bees, and the promise of summer. No speeches, no hugs, no dramatic music. Just the quiet click of something settling into place. Later after dinner, fresh salad from the garden, eggs from the neighbor's chickens, we'd traded labor for. We sat on the porch in the camp chairs. The sky was the deep blue that comes right before stars. Autumn passed around cold beers from the cooler we'd finally filled with real ice. To not being homeless, Willow said, raising her bottle. To not being alone, Autumn added. I clinked mine against theirs. To whatever this is. We drank. The night settled soft around us, the house lights steady the garden, growing the future unwritten but no longer empty.